Hello, my name is Dr. Linda DeAnn Simon, and I am a full-time adjunct faculty member at Purdue Global University. I have had a lot of different human service jobs over the course of my 20 plus year career, and today I wanted to talk about being a program administrator. I was a regional coordinator for a family resource center, and the population that we served was children and families who were involved with the Department of Family and Children Services. Typically, these children were they were involved in abuse or neglect, and they had been removed from the home and had been placed in either foster care or relative care. So we, the Family Resource Center, we had a staff of parent educators and in-home therapists that would go out and serve these clients in the community. Through parent education, therapy, supervised visits, those types of things. So my main responsibility as a program administrator in a typical week was budgeting. So I had to make sure that we had the hours to cover our staff and what they needed to do for that week. I also had to work with the staff clinically. So what we would do is we would have supervision meetings, and sometimes we would do it separately, like parent educators on one side, one meeting, and then in-home therapists in another. We would brainstorm cases. Just, if there were red flags or concerning behavior, those types of things, we would make sure that that we had the appropriate interventions and that the appropriate people knew about that. Another thing that I had to do is make sure the office was covered in terms of staff, because we had to have the phones covered and things like that, like the basic necessities of running an office. So I had to make sure that was covered. And then, of course, any kind of crisis or problem that came up, the first person that they typically would call would be me. So those were my main responsibilities during the week. Of course, there were always things that popped up. What skills are necessary for succeeding in this position? My number one skill that I would say for that would be the ability to work with a variety of different people. So I had to be able to work with DFACS, the Department of Family and Children Services, as the contractor. I had to work with my staff as the, obviously, the parent educators and the therapist. And then there were times where I would also speak with clients as well, even though I wasn't in that role doing a lot of direct client service. So those three groups were typically the main ones. And I really had to be able to communicate with each of those groups very effectively. So that's the main one. Problem solving would be another one because, things always came up on a day-to-day basis that I didn't anticipate. And so I would have to, figure out what to do with those issues. Another main responsibility would be keeping up with documentation and that type of thing. So organization was pretty important. So I really had to step up my game with that. I usually had only done direct client service. And so, I was organized in that sense, but as a program administrator, I really had to take up my organization to a new level. And so that was definitely important. What do you find most enjoyable about this work? I would have to say working with the staff. I loved working with the staff on staff development in that position. I thought it was wonderful. I loved being able to brainstorm ideas about different strategies and interventions they could use with their clients. And I love to see help the staff meet their goals, their personal and professional goals in that position. So that truly was my favorite thing about it. What do you like least about your work? I would say it would be the budgeting aspect of that. Math was never my favorite in school. And so I probably at the very beginning of that job underestimated the amount of budgeting that I would be doing. So I did budgeting to make sure we had the hours and the money coming in. But then I also had to do the budgeting for like paying the light bills and the day-to-day running of the operation of the office. And so that was an area for me coming from direct client service that was completely new. So that was really interesting. What are some of the biggest challenges you face in this position or with this population? I would have to say the budgeting of the hours. We only got 40 hours per client. And so we only had 40 hours to basically meet all of the goals that needed to be met that were set by DFACs. We could use those hours in however we wanted. So we could use them more intensely in the beginning and then spread it out a little bit more at the end. But we still only had 40 hours. And so a lot of our clients needed more than 40 hours. I mean, in fact, a lot of our clients needed at least probably twice that to meet those goals. So that was definitely a big challenge, was figuring out what can we do for this client in the hours that we have that's going to have the maximum impact, positive impact on their life. So what do you wish you had known when you first started working in human services? I think I would say that I wish I had known how draining it would be. Working with individuals that are in crisis or that are definitely struggling. And so one of the things that I realized is that I really had to up my self-care game, so to speak, and really make sure to take care of myself, identify when I was struggling, when I needed help, and to monitor that in an ongoing basis, to not wait until it was too late, to be proactive in that sense. So that would be that's one of the things that I really wish that I had known from the get-go, because it definitely took me a while to learn that. And finally, what advice do you have for human service students or for graduates that enter this field? I would say the more you can be out in the field actively working, the better. So whether that's a practicum or an internship or even volunteering, it's so helpful to be out and working with different populations and really getting that hands-on experience. Networking would be another one. Know the people in your community and know that, kind of know who to refer to, and really be familiar with the resources in your community, because that's going to make a huge difference in how you serve your clients, because you're going to know where to send them, who to send them to, who to recommend, and kind of how to navigate that world. And through that, you can help your clients much more effectively and much more in a much more time efficient fashion. So. All right, well, that's all the questions. Thank you guys so much for listening to me. I really enjoyed sharing about program administration.